Well, we're back here in the Fine Zone for the final time today. Judy Harvey's our guest. Judy, great to have you with us here.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
Just push your button. This one. Okay.
Apologies.
That was the rehearsal.
That was the rehearsal. Okay, now we're going again. Yeah. It's lovely to be here, and we've been so lucky with the weather so far. Fingers crossed. It's yeah, Summerford is its best so far.
Now, obviously, we're here at the National Championships. I think we've got to start with the fact that you've now qualified for 41 and been to 40. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah, I qualified horses for 41 consecutive years, and I'm only 22. And once one horse was sold, so I didn't actually compete that year, but otherwise had an unbroken run. But this has been my 40th national championship.
I mean, I think you're probably the only one that can say that, I would think.
I think I am, because I kind of in the early days kept an eye on it, and luckily we'd send people like Carl Hester off to championships in Australia or somewhere like the Olympic Games, so that he couldn't, his record got broken. Yeah, and I'm older than most other people riding, so that helps as well.
So you've been around the sport a long time. How's it kind of changed in the years you've been involved?
It's changed enormously. When I first started to get involved in dressage, the National Championships was in a field opposite the main entrance to the Stoneleigh National Agricultural Centre on grass.
Okay.
I think there were 4 or 5 arenas on grass, and the senior championship, the national title, was an advanced 100 test with 3 4-time changes in it, and that was the top level. And people like David Hunt were competing there, and Trish Gardner and so on, and I was lucky enough to sit in the back of one of the cars and watch the judging progress. I didn't ride at that one, but kind of thought, oh, I'd quite like to do this one day.
And the horses will have changed as well. You know, the modern type that we see must have been different from back then.
Yeah, my goodness, when you look round this showground and see the quality of the horses that are out here competing in all the classes now, right through the levels, it is extraordinary. And you know, when I first started, there were many thoroughbreds off the track competing, and they were competitive in those days, and we hadn't seriously got into the warm blood breeding as much as we have now, but that really applies all over the world. The standard of dressage horses is just gone ballistic. It's incredible. The athletic, amazing horses with great temperaments that are now managing to breed.
And does that change? I mean, I know obviously you judge as well. So does that change the way that you judge? You know, 10 years ago to get an 8 or a 9, would it be different than what you have to do today to get an 8 or a 9?
I don't think they gave 8s and 9s in those days. I think it was, you know, you could win a class easily on 60%.
Sure.
And I think the dressage was all, the judging was very negative in those days. People were more about fault finding rather than rewarding brilliance. Perhaps they didn't recognise brilliance so easily, but I think it's changed a lot over the years, and people are much more positive in their judging now, and do recognise that there is a 10 button, and yeah, so we get these mega scores like we had at the Europeans and things just recently.
Yeah, we've got to talk about the Europeans, because international is obviously a department you're heavily involved with. I mean, it must just be great to sit and watch how well Great Britain does on a regular basis. I mean, that consistency is really there.
Well, it's been brilliant this year, particularly with all the under-21s doing so well, way beyond our expectations, and for them to get their medals, their team medals, and then it put a bit of pressure on the seniors actually to come up with the goods. But we always knew at the beginning of the year that we had a great team if we could just keep them all in one piece and get them to the championship. And everybody else's were getting into trouble and falling by the wayside, and I think we got more and more hopeful, and it became more and more of a reality. And then come selection, we had the dream team, and yeah, everything, all the ducks fell in a row, and it was fantastic.
And looking ahead to Paris, how do you think our chances are ranking? I mean, it must be pretty good after last week.
Well, even better.
Yeah.
And our top 3 horses, they are maturing still. They're learning and they're getting more experience. And okay, whether or not we have Brealinka next year remains to be seen, but she's always been such a solid horse for our team, and Gareth just rode her so brilliantly in Germany in the Europeans, and so the fourth slot is a little bit dodgy, but we don't have 4. We've only got 3 in the team, but we still have a reserve. But if we can get Glamourdale, Imatep and Fame on form again, and with hopefully their owners still willing to take part and provide for us, that I think the other nations will be a little fearful.
What's the secret as to why we are so good at dressage? Because in the other disciplines you see, North America, the Europeans, it's a real kind of mix at the top, but GB always just seems to hang on in there.
You're very young.
It's not always been like that.
It certainly hasn't always been like that. We've had some disastrous championships in Great Britain. I remember one European Championships when we were completely bottom and none of our riders got through to the special. And it has evolved enormously and very quickly, really, since Windsor. You may remember at Windsor we got a silver medal, and that was a fantastic team result. And then we went on to win the gold at the Europeans in Rotterdam, and then that in turn went forward to the gold at the Olympics in London. And since then, I think we've medalled every single championship, which is a phenomenal record, and very exciting. But I think because we're a horse-friendly nation and we like to manage our horses very well in a friendly way, and that the style of dressage has evolved to be more horse-friendly, and people appreciate harmony so much. And we've been very lucky to have trainers of the likes of Carl Hester also riding, and his whole ethos is managing the horses in a friendly way, lots of time in the field, hacking, doing different stuff. And the rest of the world is kind of waking up to that and recognizing that beautiful picture of which is what dressage is all about, is the horse appearing to do everything for the rider without any direct signals or force, just because they want to do it, has really taken off.
And how do you think the sport's going to continue to evolve? Are the tests going to get harder? Are we going to... how does it change?
We still haven't had 100%. Nobody's had 100%. And in the days of Torvill and Dean and things, they managed to get 100%, didn't they? And so maybe we getting a complete horse that can walk, trot and canter Piaffe Passage really well and has good changes and has the whole package, like Vallegro used to be. And that it's got to be that with absolutely no mistakes. And Vallegro came very close to the 100%. With his freestyle, was it 96 or something?
Yeah.
And if he'd had a slightly better extended walk, then I think he would have got the 100%.
Do you think judges are sometimes a little bit scared to be given out 10s?
Yes.
Because they're going to go down in history. When we get 100%, it's going to be talked about forever.
It is, and you don't want to be the one judge that's given 100% and everyone's given 94.
Yeah, sure.
Nor do you want to be the one judge that's given 94 and the others are given 100. And that's gonna. But the judges, I feel, shouldn't think about that. They should think entirely about judging the horse that's in front of them and what they can see and what their opinion is of that horse, and they shouldn't be concerned about what the other judges are doing, because they're there to give their opinion. And I think that's sometimes if they try to be too even and get a little bit afraid to go up and down as they should.
Sure.
And that's where they've got to have the confidence to do that.
And this year we're celebrating 25 years. What's your best memories over the last 25 years of British dressage?
Medals, lots of them. I can remember when we first started off, and it was a huge gamble for British dressage. I was actually on the committee for the old one, but I didn't want to come on for the new. Under the BHS, I was on the old committee, but I didn't want to step through to the new one because there were more directorships and it became a more formal agreement. And so stood back for a little while to see how it would develop. But it has been a fantastic journey, and it just goes to show success breeds interest, and success breeds crowds, success breeds kids wanting to do the job, and so the whole sport develops. And the nice thing about dressage is it's always been a sport that there's not, for horse sports, it's probably the least dangerous of horse sports. So a lot of families are quite happy for their children to play around in dressage. Husbands don't mind the wives doing it, wives don't mind the husbands doing it so much. So it should be and is a very popular sport for amateur riders and to come through the grades.
And what about your personal highlights for the last 25 years? Is there anything that kind of sticks out? Any horses in particular?
Well, obviously Fitzgeraldo.
Yeah.
He was amazing and gave me my first summer national title, and a few more besides. And when I look back, I actually won the Inter 2 championship, and I think I got 76% in back in those days with him. And at the time, you didn't really appreciate it because you just went, well, now I've got to go on and do Grand Prix. Now I've got to do more. But looking back, it was a real phenomenal achievement on a horse that cost basically well under 5 figures.
And was that luck or just so much hard work?
Of course I'm going to say it was hard work. It was luck too. Of course it's luck. You've got to keep your horse sound. You've got to be in the right place at the right time. There's a lot of luck. Your lorry can break down, and all sorts of stresses. There's lots of ducks to get in a row to get up that centre line in the best form that you can possibly be in.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
And you do you wear so many hats, from coaching, judging, riding, the international stuff. What do you enjoy most?
I love riding. I love training horses. That's probably why I'm still doing it, because I don't do it. I've had not the greatest ride today, but I've trained the horse myself and brought him up through the levels, and I'm very proud of what we've done. And and every day when they progress a little bit, that's gives me a great pleasure. But I also love training people, and I've got several very good people who are still riding. And Charlotte was with me, Dujardin was with me for a long time, and Dan Sheriff, and all sorts. There's a lot of people out there who I've had a little bit of an input into their careers, put it like that, and that gives me a huge amount of pleasure.
It's quite a legacy that you've created. I mean, Charlotte was there as a working pupil, wasn't she? That's where she... And that foundation is the foundation she relies on today, I would imagine. Yeah,
she's always very gracious, and it's quite nice if I'm leaning against the rail when she's riding. She'll say, "Was that straight? What do you think of that?" and things like that, which is, I love. But she, I'm very, very proud of what she's done.
And what's the horses you've got now? Let's talk about kind of today, tomorrow. What's the future for Judy Harvey?
Who knows? I mean, I've always said, well, initially I said I was going to stop riding when I was 50 and concentrate on the judging. And then Fitzgeraldo came along, and I thought, well, I'm not stopping now. And then for one reason or another, I had to stop judging because I wasn't allowed to ride judging and judge internationally at the same time.
Right, okay.
So I only do national judging now. So what's coming next? I've started breeding. I've got a nice 2-year-old, a very nice yearling, but I've always said that I wasn't breeding them for me to ride, they're for somebody else. So I hope with SP Bento we can carry on and progress a little bit more. And but I kind of rode up the centre line this morning thinking, is this going to be the last time?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And it's not, is it?
I don't know. We'll see.
Well, it was a bad test, you said, so it can't be.
No, exactly.
You've got to finish on a high, which means you've got to get back next year.
Well, yeah, exactly. So we'll try and do that, yeah.
Well, it's always a pleasure having you here. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And this is our final fan zone for today. If you're watching on Facebook Live, don't forget we're going to be popping up throughout the LeMieux National Dressage Championships, so make sure you come back and join us again.